And then we will have open testimony after that, after Senator Saldana presents her bill, of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Matt Shepard-Coningsore, and I'm staff to the committee. Senate Bill 5109 is an act relating to creating a wage replacement program for certain Washington workers excluded from unemployment insurance. It is sponsored by Senator Saldana and others. House Bill 1095 is a companion bill. As background, ESD administers the Washington UI program, regular UI program. UI provides partial wage replacement to certain eligible unemployed workers. The weekly benefit amount is based on the claimant's earning in their base year and adjusted in accordance with a statutory formula. The maximum duration of benefits is equal to the lesser of 26 times the weekly benefit amount, or 1/3 of the individual's base year wages. UI benefits may not be paid unless the claimant was lawfully admitted, lawfully present, or otherwise permanently residing in the United States under certain conditions. ESD confirms this immigration status prior to the claimant receiving benefits. In December 2021, ESD published a report detailing how Washington could set up a UI program for undocumented workers, and the report stated in part that if Washington wished to provide these benefits, it can only do so through a program separate and apart from the existing UI system. Specifically, the bill before you creates a wage replacement program similar to the UI system for workers who are ineligible for benefits, UI benefits, as a result of not being authorized to work in the United States. Beginning January 1st, 2026, a claimant is eligible to receive benefits under the program if ESD determines the following steps are satisfied in order. First, the claimant files an application for benefits under the UI system. ESD then denies the application based on lack of work authorization, and ESD invites the claimant to apply for benefits under the new program. The claimant must then file an application for benefits under the program, which includes information and documentation verifying the claimant is a state resident, which may be shown through a variety of methods outlined on page 4 of the bill report, and has sufficient photographic identification confirming their identity. They must have worked 680 hours in employment in the base year, which is the requirement under the regular UI system, or earned wages during the base year equal to 680 times the minimum wage in effect during the first quarter of their base year. They must be unemployed through no fault of their own, which ESD may verify by contacting the claimant's former employers to verify, and they must have been unemployed for a waiting period of 1 week. ESD may contract with a third-party community-based organization to assist claimants in gathering required information and documentation. However, ESD must make the final decision on eligibility. Then an eligible claimant may qualify for weekly benefits by self-attesting they're actively seeking work and reporting wages received during that week. Actively seeking work includes participating in job search, educational, or professional development opportunities adopted and ruled by ESD, and ESD may conduct random audits to confirm this information. An eligible and qualified claimant must then receive a weekly, or may receive a weekly benefit amount equal to the amount calculated in UI. And benefits are due and payable only to the extent funds are available in the newly created account. The bill contains additional provisions regarding disqualifications, review, and appeals, which are modeled after similar provisions in regular UI. And ESD must establish procedures comparable to those in UI, and the same penalties for fraud in UI apply to the program. Then the bill prohibits ESD from taking certain actions relative to obtaining information from a claimant regarding their legal status, nationality, race, and other information. And the bill requires ESD to destroy certain records within 15 days of a claimant's written statement indicating they are no longer using the program. And finally, the bill directs ESD to appoint an advisory committee composed of 11 specified members for the purpose of reviewing issues and topics related to administration of the program. And a fiscal note was received with ESD indicating operating expenditures of approximately $8.4 million in the 23-25 fiscal biennium, and the Office of the Attorney General indicating expenditures of $540,000 from the Legal Services revolving account, and additional fiscal impacts are outlined for subsequent biennia. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That was a long presentation.
Yes, sorry.
Senator King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. Very nicely done, in all honesty. It really is. So I got two questions for you, if I may, Madam Chair. So is there anything in this bill that protects the employer who has has hired these workers, these undocumented workers, and so that when that undocumented worker applies for unemployment, that's not going to set off bells and whistles, and then somebody's going to go after the employer if the employer's done their due diligence?
There are not specific provisions. There's many provisions on information confidentiality and instances where ESD can reach out to the employer, but no specific provisions that say, if an employer provides this information, they're protected, which I think is what you're asking.
That is correct. My second question has to do is, as an employer pays into the UI funds, which, because my assumption here is that they're going to believe that the employee they have is here legally and all of that. Here it gets a little complicated. We all recognize that. But once that employer pays the unemployment benefit and sends it into ESD, how is ESD going to know that those funds maybe should have gone to the special fund? Or are we funding that fund in another way?
So the bill does not, as written, it does not currently address funding. There's not an appropriation and there's not a tax imposed in the bill as written. So the regular UI fund is a completely separate fund from this newly created account in this program. And perhaps, if ESD is here, maybe they can expand on how, the separation
I'm just curious how we make that separation and designation. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Matt. And I do see that Caitlin is here from the ESD, and I do have one question for you about that, Caitlin, if you could come up about maintaining the integrity. I know that ESD does have to operate under federal rules, and I want to make sure we're not going to kind of cross any lines as we move forward with this. So how do we maintain the integrity of the ESD fund and add this individual program?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Caitlin Jekyll, Government Relations Director for ESD. And this is a topic that we have been closely engaged with the sponsor on because it is critical that this program not use any of the existing resources that federal funds pay for to administer a unemployment insurance program in the state of Washington. So certainly, as you see reflected in the bill, and our fiscal note, we would be having somebody sort of make a referral where in an early part in the application, there would be an indicator that because the person is not eligible due to immigration status, then they would be routed over and we would need to maintain a completely separate program, separate funding. That includes adjudicators, appeals, processes, IT, all of those various things would need to be a separate and distinct team.
Yeah, kind of like you do for family leave. You have a separate standalone for the family leave administration as well, correct?
Yeah. So this would just be a route at the start of the application process.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Senator King.
Do you have any way of how would you identify those funds when they come to you? Because they're undoubtedly going to, well, I would assume they're going to come to you as just a regular UI payment from that employer. Are you planning on saying once the application comes, then we're going to look at the name that was used and then track those funds and see? No?
Nope, that is not what is envisioned. So as folks have articulated and previously, and you'll probably hear in testimony today, right now taxes come in on behalf of all workers. The employer would have no way to discern if somebody meets this criteria, and they are paying unemployment insurance taxes, and that's going into our state trust fund, and that would remain the same. We would be absolutely prohibited from sort of carving those dollars out of the state trust fund to seed a different program. This would be just a separate and distinct funding source.
So we need to come up with a funding source to feed this fund.
Correct.
Is that correct? All right.
All right, that's clarifying. Very much appreciate you coming forward. I'm sorry, Senator Braun has a question also. I didn't see it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is obviously it's complicated, but as I understand it, organizations are prohibited under federal law from employing folks that aren't here in a legal status. So is there liability associated with, again, for the companies or for ESD? Who enforces that in our state, and how is it enforced? And does this create more challenges for both the employee and the employer with this program?
So we are engaged in, are there ways to make language changes in the bill that make it more clear what communication the employer is receiving from ESD to ensure we aren't accidentally providing a piece of information to the employer that gives a liability to them. That said, when somebody applies for benefits and we would reach out to the employer and do fact finding and say, did this person work for you? Were they laid off? What are the conditions of their layoff? Things of that regard. There wouldn't be any way that in that communication you would know what on the back end, which benefit program is paying the individual. And so for ESD, we need to be cautious about making sure that it is really truly a referral to a completely separate and distinct program. But as far as what the employer would be receiving as they are experiencing this program, the intention is that they wouldn't be experiencing anything different than they otherwise would when we're reaching out about any employee.
I'm not sure that.
Okay, Senator Saldana is the sponsor of the bill, and I bet she can speak to some of these concerns. I want to thank you, Caitlin, for clarifying.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee, for entertaining the bill that is before you today. And just wanted to get Caitlin off the hot seat a little, because this is not ESD request legislation, although I am, as you heard from the bill report, over this interim, ESD, community immigrant rights attorneys, employment insurance attorneys, and our business community have engaged in great detail to create a very robust policy that does look at liability, making sure that we're creating and standing up a program that could function. And as you also heard, I intentionally did not put a specific revenue. I do think that first and foremost, we as a legislative body need to consider the policy before us, and knowing that we have so many pressing issues as a legislative body is to first and foremost decide what our values are as a legislative body. And then once that is decided, we can then decide what is the right revenue stream for a state-only wage and play replacement program. And so let me put before you just a little bit about my values and why I'm bringing this bill before you. Today, the legislative body and every Washingtonian is benefiting from work that is done by people that do not have the documents that allow them to work legally in the United States or in the state of Washington. If we've eaten an apple, if we have eaten out at a restaurant, we most likely have benefited from work that was done by essential workers over the last 3 years that may or may not have those documents. If our families have been cared for, if our children have been nannied, if we do almost anything in the state of Washington, we have been touched by a worker that has risked their lives every day to be able to go to work, to serve and perform work, to be able to help their families and help our economy thrive. And many of their employers, knowingly or unknowingly, today hire them to do that work in construction, in hospitality, in agriculture, in healthcare, in education. And they pay to the best of their ability into the unemployment insurance program to be able to create a safety net when workers lose their jobs for no fault of their own, because they know that it not only benefits that worker and their family, but it provides stability in our economy. Because when an unemployed worker, while they're looking for work, has some wage replacement, it allows them to continue to pay their rent, to be able to buy groceries, to be able to get their kids where they need them to be. And so as a state, we have benefited from that. employers are paying in to be able to try to provide that safety net. And yet we've seen, especially in this pandemic, thousands of workers lose their jobs through no fault of their own and have nothing, no safety net to rely upon. And so what is before you is a policy that would allow the state of Washington to recognize that work is valued, essential work is valued, regardless of whether that worker has been provided documentation to be able to work legally, and that our economy would not be as resilient and strong through this pandemic had they not shown up for work, to be able to feed us, care for us, and so for that purpose, I do believe the state of Washington does value work, all work, and does want to make sure that our economies are resilient. And so for those purposes, you will hear testimony today about why this policy is worth our consideration and why we should wrestle with how do we make sure that we can fund it properly to provide this, to recognize the work and make sure that it is respected.
Thank you, Senator Saldana. I know you've been working on this issue for, I think, ever since you got to the legislature, and it is a great mission and passion in your work. I appreciate your work on this. We now have, I really do need to move along. If we could take the testimony and then answer questions during the testimony, perhaps. We have 940 people signed in. Luckily, they are not all wanting to testify. However, we have many people who have signed in to testify today, and I'm going to have to limit time for testimony to 2 minutes. I know many of you have interpreters, so you will have more than 2 minutes for the interpreter to also make us aware of the testimony. Unless it's a very quick question, Senator Conway, we're going to start right into testimony. Okay, all right, let's get going. Senator Saldana, can you call our first panel and give our on-deck people a heads up so if they're in the overflow room, they can come in?
Yes, the first panel will be Gloria Santiago, Sybil Hippolyte, Daniel Alvarado, and the on-deck folks will be Albert Zepeda, Julia Gorton, Robert Battles, and Tom Kwisiak. Thank you. As you come forward, you may begin so that we can keep on schedule.
Okay, great.
Is Gloria at the table? There she is. Okay, good.
Okay.
And Gloria is accompanied by an interpreter.
Gloria está aquí con un intérprete.
Do you want to tell
Se
them?
lo puede quitar si quiere. Se lo puede quitar.
Go ahead, Gloria,
Gloria, puede comenzar.
as quickly as you can.
Puede comenzar.
Hola, mi nombre es Gloria Ramírez Santiago, vivo en Seattle y soy del distrito 37. Quiero pedir permiso a los elementos dadores de vida, al espacio en el cual nos encontramos, sobre todo los ancestros de estas tierras. Quiero compartir que estoy a favor de que el seguro de desempleo para comunidades indocumentadas en Washington. Soy una mujer indígena ñusabi. El día de hoy vengo trayendo historias de situaciones difíciles que vivimos en la comunidad, especialmente aquellos a quienes nos mal llaman inmigrantes. En la pandemia vivimos una desigualdad muy grande porque en nuestros trabajos nos decían que iban a cerrar y nos íbamos a quedar sin trabajo y sin amparo a tener desempleo. Nosotros no respondemos nada porque nos invade un gran miedo de estar sin empleo y sin beneficios. Esto es como vivir flotando y vivir ignorados en nuestras comunidades, aun cuando nosotros también aportamos impuestos al gobierno. El quedarse sin empleo es preocupante porque uno se preocupa de cómo vamos a estar sin vivienda y sobre todo cuando nuestros hogares son multifamiliares, por el costo tan alto, se piensa primero en la renta antes que en el hambre. Ha sido más fuerte el miedo a las facturas médicas antes que el miedo al virus. La salud para muchos queda a un lado durante la crisis porque necesitábamos trabajar y aportar al hogar. Por eso aceptamos cualquier empleo así uno estuviera expuesto al contagio de COVID. Yo les pido que nos tomen en cuenta a todos en general para garantizar la oportunidad de tener el beneficio de desempleo para aligerar nuestras cargas de temor a quedarnos sin empleo y sin poder proveer para nuestras familias.
Thank you. And can you state your name also as the interpreter? Gracias.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Fanny Cordero, Spanish certified interpreter. Hello, my name is Gloria Ramirez Santiago. I live in Seattle and I'm from the 37th District. I'd like to acknowledge and honor the life-giving elements, the space in which we find ourselves, especially the ancestors of these lands. I'm here in support of unemployment insurance for undocumented communities in Washington. I am a new, savvy Indigenous woman. Today, I bring stories of difficult situations that we live in the community, especially those of us who are wrongly called immigrants. In the pandemic, we experienced tremendous inequality because in our jobs, they told us that they were going to shut down and we were going to be left without work and without unemployment protection. We did not respond because we were overwhelmed by a great fear of being unemployed and without benefits. It is like we're floating and living ignored in our communities, even though we also pay taxes to the government. Being unemployed is troubling because one worries that we are going to be homeless, especially when our homes are multifamily because of the high housing costs. You think about rent first before you think about hunger. The fear of medical bills has been stronger than the fear of the virus. Health for many of us was put aside during the crisis because we needed to work and contribute to the household. That is why we accepted any job, even if we were exposed to COVID. I ask you all to consider all of us as a whole to guarantee the opportunity to have unemployment benefits, to lighten our burdens from the fear of being unemployed and not being able to provide for our families. Thank you.
Yeah, please proceed, Sybil.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Kaiser and Ranking Member King. My name is Sybil
Could
Hippolyte.
you move the microphone closer, please?
Yes. Is that better? Better. Okay, great. I'll also yell a little. Good morning, Madam Chair and Ranking Member King. My name is Sybil Hippolyte, and I'm here with the Washington State Labor Council. We're here in support of SB 5109. The unemployment insurance program ensures stability for workers laid off by no fault of their own or who have had to quit for approved reasons. Unfortunately, many workers are excluded from this program due to immigration status, even though they pay into the program and are a really important part of our economy. Their exclusion has been a problem for as long as the UI program has existed, but it became a crisis at the onset of the pandemic and throughout. When workers were laid off across our economy, these particular workers had very little or no safety net to sustain their families. This bill would provide excluded workers with wage replacement that other Washingtonians have access to. Closing this gap in the unemployment program is a racial justice issue. Closing this gap is an opportunity for Washington's continued leadership in labor standards. ESD did detailed and extensive work with community members to outline the parameters of this program. The governor's office is involved in identifying solutions to make this program a reality. Please pass SB 5109 to create stability across our workforce, close a gap in access, and advance racial equity in our state. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Alvarado. I'm the Executive Director of Fairwork Center in Working Washington, a statewide workers' rights organization. I'm testifying today to share our strong support for this bill and to tell you a little more about the work we've done over the last few years to bring it to where it is today. We organize on issues and in industries with workers who have been shut out of workplace protections, often on the basis of race and gender. That, of course, includes many undocumented immigrant workers who are our families and loved ones and essential to the strength of the Washington economy. And as you heard from Gloria and we'll hear on with other speakers, the impact of job loss is never limited to the individual. Unemployed workers face loss of housing, inability to pay medical bills, inability to pay child care. And when workers are left without support, our families and broader communities are less stable. Access to unemployment is essential to preventing that instability for the rest of the workforce. Undocumented workers are no different than any other worker. We have worked very hard over the last few years with the sponsors, and particularly this last interim with the department, the Attorney General's office, the Governor's office, to develop the framework that we have today. And it's an approach that really advances a critical shared goal of a safety net that is accessible to all workers while really balancing the needs of workers, industry, and the state. And I want to share a few key details about the framework that we have now. One, it adopts and mirrors the unemployment system to the best extent we can for this separate state-administered program. It has careful consideration thinking about how to make it administrable considering the needs of this workforce. It has strong privacy protections to protect both workers and employers, and it builds on the infrastructure and expertise we have developed through administering the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund since 2020. We've had productive conversations with businesses thinking about how we can build on the current language to further clarify the protections that are available for employers. And I think those conversations are ongoing, but we all have articulated a shared interest and understand the importance of a stable workforce for industries including hospitality, construction, and agriculture, among many others. And so we urge your support for this bill and to help continue to make sure Washington is a leader in improving workforce conditions for every worker in the state. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we call up, Albert Zepeda is on remote, and I see that they are ready. Just call up also Julia. I'm sorry, there's no questions, I think, for this, although I didn't look carefully. Okay. And so Julia Gorton, Robert Battles, Tom Kizuak, and on deck before we have Albert speak will be Gloria Medina, Edith Enriquez, Laura Gonzalez, and with their interpreters, Humberto Gonzalez and Marisela Rodriguez. And with that, if we can have Albert begin remotely. Albert, just if you could please make sure that unmute is off. Thank you, and state your name for the record.
Hi, good morning. My name is Albert Zepeda. I am the Director of Human Resources for Cal Mathison Orchards in Wenatchee, Washington. We are members of the Washington Farm Bureau, and unfortunately today I am testifying on Senate Bill 1509. To begin with, though, I want to say that I appreciate all of you being concerned for all Washington residents, regardless of their legal status, and making sure they have money for their basic necessities while unemployed. I understand that there's work being done on potential changes to the bill, and I hope there's a path forward to address the needs of the workers while also addressing the concerns of the employer. But with that said, all the well-intentioned elements of the current bill are concerning. From the employer's perspective, it's concerning that the bill states that the department may contract with a third-party organization to assist claimants in gathering information and documentation for the unemployment claim. I don't know any HR professional that would violate the responsibility of privacy to the employee or risk creating a liability by sharing sensitive employment documents with third parties outside of a subpoena. Also concerning is the fact that some of the information being requested might be company proprietary. So if this bill moves forward, I would suggest that legislative liability protections be included for employers and their HR teams. I would also suggest that any third-party employee handling these documents be required to have HR training to help ensure the security of said documents. My final concern is the fact that although this bill supposes to help those in need when work is scarce, it would actually hurt them most when work is abundant. I say this because the moment I or any employer receives this new secondary employment verification or a red flag will be raised, letting us know that employees in question is probably not authorized to work in the U.S., and thus we won't be able to rehire that employee until they can prove that they are who they say they are. And this might not be a problem in Seattle or its surrounding cities because if a worker is not hireable with one employer, they'll just move on across the street to the next employer and get hired there. However, in places like Wenatchee, that employer pool is a lot smaller, and in agriculture, it's even smaller. So essentially, in a few years, an undocumented worker in Wenatchee will eventually be red flagged in all employers in the area. So before moving forward, I ask the committee to please listen to these serious concerns and consider the impact on this vulnerable group of workers and their families if they lose their livelihood because of this well-intentioned bill. Thank you for your time today.
Go ahead.
Julia, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Julia Gorton here today on behalf of the Washington Hospitality Association, representing your local restaurants and lodging establishments in every district across the state. I am testifying in opposition, unfortunately, to Senate Bill 5109. And first, I do want to acknowledge that nearly a quarter of our industry's workforce is born outside the United States. We would not survive without immigrant communities in Washington working in our industry. Our employees are the backbone of the hospitality businesses, and all employees should be treated equally regardless of where they were born. I also want to acknowledge the ongoing conversations we've been having with the sponsors of the bill as well as the proponents of the bill. They have been productive, but our opposition from the bill arises from the complications of mirroring the unemployment insurance system, which is a federal program, with this state program. Still, the United States has, the federal government has preemption over immigration policy and can levy significant fines on businesses who violate this. And in our opinion, that is a strong incentive for businesses to comply with those requirements. As mentioned, the unemployment insurance system is a vital social safety net. It provides support for both businesses and workers. Not only is it the monetary benefit that helps keep workers on their feet as they find the next job, but it also provides job-seeking support to a lot of folks. And it's this piece of the bill located in Section 7 that we're having challenges with, which requires folks who are not authorized to work in the United States to seek employment and gets that support from the department. That piece, I think, for us is continuing to raise concerns, and that rub is really what we're here with concerns for. For that reason, we would ask that you not move the bill forward until those pieces can be worked out. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Tom Kwesiak here representing the Building Industry Association of Washington. Also today, Con on Senate Bill 5109. A lot of the same concerns that Julia just expressed. Again, we have also been working with the sponsor and the proponents of the bill to try to iron some of these issues out. In construction, I think we all know, as in many industries, there's difficulty in finding a qualified workforce. And so it is certainly in the interest of our members to keep good qualified workers. There are layoffs in construction normally, whether it's weather in Eastern Washington or just the end of a job. Our employers really like to hire people back that they know are good workers. The unemployment system helps that happen because it keeps, again, gives some stability to those workers so they don't go out and find something else to do in the meantime. And so our employers can't find them that way. However, 5109, I think, again, you've heard, has some unintended consequences. And the number one is it jeopardizes the ability of our contractors to potentially hire people back because of this issue of constructive knowledge. If they find out and there's a paper trail that they know that these people are not here legally, then they are prohibited from hiring them back, and that's a problem. So, and there's no safe harbor in the bill for our employers, and part of it's because it's a federal issue as well. We're also concerned about the $150 million per biennium price tag that we've heard. Again, the unemployment funds are not allowed to be used for this program. So we have a situation where potentially employers would be double paying. And so just as unfair as it is that workers can't access these funds, I think it's also just as unfair if employers have to pay twice, because remember, employers are the ones who pay into the unemployment insurance fund, not workers. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Bob Battles, Association of Washington Business. We had a state chamber, the State Manufacturing Technology Association. Our employers employ more than 750 million of the, or 1,000 of the state's employees. And while we have the largest employers in some of them in the world, we also tend, or 65% of our members employ 10 or fewer. We have, again, the same concerns that were raised here. We are testifying in opposition to SB 5109. I want to acknowledge the sponsor pulling us together. We've also talked to the proponents. We've been meeting with them, trying to address some specific concerns. I think our first concern, of course, is that we believe there's a federal preemption here, and there could be a problem with this because it is dealing with the immigration issues specifically. We would love to see the federal government figure this out. I think everybody is agreed with there. We know that's not going to happen. So now the second thing, we were really concerned about the constructive knowledge. This is, again, you heard this a little bit by folks about where once we know that they're not qualified for UI because they're not documented, we then turn around and say, how can we hire them because we now have knowledge? We've talked to the proponents about that issue, and we're trying to find a way to keep that. We were concerned in the bill, as written currently, that it requires ESD to destroy documents immediately upon after using them to verify. They've actually said, as I understand from ESD, we can't do that because we have to issue 1099s at the end. So there's, again, new things. They're trying to talk about how you can mirror the UI system, but as was stated, you cannot use those funds even though money has been paid in probably for these same workers. That's not available under federal preemption as well. However, I think the thing that Tom kind of pointed out too is that's that $150 million biennium budget. We could get all of these policy things figured out, but then we have to figure out how do you pay that. The concern we have is, again, if you go after the particular industries that end up having this happen the most, you gain constructive knowledge. If you go after and you socialize it, you well imagine how that's going to go over with the rest of the business community as well. So again, we appreciate it, continue to work on it.
Senator Chesler has a question.
Madam Chair, my apologies, I was late, but Mr. Battles brought up the question I had. Where does the money come from? I mean, because if you're not documented, you're not using your actual ID to pay in, and the socialized costs, is this a general fund allocation then?
At this point, there is no funding source in the bill, but it can't come out of UI, which employers pay 100% of. It can't come out of that, even though you are paying for those individual workers. And so the only way is you either create a different fund or it comes out of the general fund, or you create some other fund that employers pay into. There is nothing designated in the bill.
Okay, well, the funding mechanism, because of the lack of proper documentation, was a question. Thank you for your patience and thank you for your answer.
Go ahead, call the next people forward.
Great. I see that we have our next panel ready remotely. So before we have them go, I want to call on deck the next group, which will include Jeff Pack. And then after Jeff Pack, it would be Jose Christian Piedra, Germán Godinez, Lorraine Johnson, and Lillian Garcia. With that, let's go back to this panel that's before us. Gloria Medina, you may begin. Gloria, just make sure that the unmute is off. Gloria, tienes que parar.
Ya.
Okay, ahora sí.
Ya. Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Gloria Medina. Vivo en Yakima junto con mis hijas. Más fuerte. Emigré en Yakima del 1992 y tengo 29 años trabajando y contribuyendo con mis taxes en este estado. Hace 3 meses perdí mi empleo, junto antes del Día de Acción de Gracias. Soy madre soltera y soy la que mantiene mi hogar, junto con mis hijas. Perdí de mi sueldo, cual me puso en total pánico porque como muchos de nosotros, con lo poco que ganamos, estamos de cheque a cheque, apenas cubrimos nuestros gastos para nosotros. Estos 3 meses ha sido una batalla constante sin poder pagar mi renta, biles, internet, comida, celular, gas, aseguranzas y asistencia personal y para el hogar decidiendo que es más importante. En el momento porque no alcanza para más, aplicado para varios empleos en los cuales han sido discriminados.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Tenemos la interpretación ahora.
Yes, good morning. My name is Humberto Gonzalez. I'll be interpreting Gloria Medina's testimony. Hello, my name is Gloria Medina. I live in Yakima with my daughters. I immigrated to Yakima in 1992. I have been working for 29 years and paying taxes to the state. 3 months ago, I lost my job just before Thanksgiving. I am a single mother, and I am the one who supports my home. My daughters depend on me and depend on my salary. When I lost my job, that put me in total panic because, like many of us, with very little funds, we live paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet. For us, these past 3 months, when I lost my job, have been a constant battle without being able to pay my rent, my bills, my internet, my food, my cell phone, my gas, insurance, personal and household essentials. I had to decide what is more important at the moment because there is just not enough. I have applied for several jobs in which I have been discriminated against because of my age, since I cannot lift more than 50 pounds or stand for more than 10 hours a day. As an undocumented person, being able to obtain unemployment would be a great help for me and my family in these difficult times. Right now, I work on my own, cleaning houses. That pays me very poorly, but I have to take these jobs because there's nothing else. There's no other way. Otherwise, my family would not be able to eat or have a roof over their head. I hope the bill passes soon so that other people do not see themselves in the same need as I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I think the next is Edith Enriquez.
Hola.
Hola, sí escuchamos. Habla.
Okay. Hola, mi nombre es Edith Enríquez. Vivo en el área de Basin City, en el condado de Franklin, en el distrito número 3. Hoy estoy aquí porque yo apoyo la ley del seguro de desempleo para los que no contamos con un estatus migratorio. Por más de 25 años yo he estado trabajando en este estado, contribuyendo a la economía. He trabajado en el campo, bodegas, nurserías y restaurantes. Como mamá, mi mayor prioridad son mis 5 hijos. Y a lo largo de todos estos años ha sido un frecuente dolor de cabeza pensar que viene la temporada del trabajo que se va a terminar en el tiempo del invierno, ya que es el tiempo en que se acaba el trabajo del campo. A pesar de que yo he contribuido en todos estos 25 años con la economía, pagando mis taxas como lo dicta la ley. Esto ha sido un problema de salud porque muchas veces he tenido que decidir entre comprar mis medicamentos o comprar comida o pagar los biles de la casa. Durante la pandemia esto se complicó más porque tardé casi un año que no pude trabajar. Tuve que pedir prestado a familiares, amigos, buscar en bancos de comida, otras cosas. Muchas veces es difícil esto y me gustaría que ustedes se pusieran solamente un minuto en mis zapatos y pensaran qué pasaría si mañana ya no tienen trabajo o otra fuente de ingresos. ¿Cómo le harían para llevar comida a su casa, pagar sus cuentas y todo lo demás? En sus manos está el destino de mi familia y de muchas más que contribuimos a este estado, que sea un mejor estado y que tenga una buena economía. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. The interpreter, please.
Hello, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Edith Marquez, and I live in Basin City area in Franklin County, 3rd District. I am here today because I supported the unemployment insurance law for those who do not have an immigration status. I have lived in Washington State for more than 25 years. During these years, I have worked in the fields, wineries, nurseries, and restaurants. As a mother, my highest priority are my 5 children. And throughout all these years, it has been a recurring headache to think that the work season is going to end, since I have no other source of income in my home during the winter time season. Despite the fact that for 25 years, I have contributed to the economy of this state by paying my taxes as the law dictates. As of today, health problems and stress just from the fact of thinking about the winter season, and it's the more difficult for me due to lack of work. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation became more complicated since for almost a year that the quarantine lasted. I had to borrow money from my family and friends, look for food in food banks, among other things. Many times I have had to decide when I do not have a job between buying my medicine since I'm a diabetic person or paying bills, the rent, or even buying food. I will appreciate it if you will take a minute of your time and imagine from one day to the next, you no longer have a job or access to any type of benefit. What will you do in this situation? How will you bring food to your family? How will you pay your bills? In your hands is not the only destiny of my family, but also the families of thousands of people that, as I contribute a lot of the state and to the country. I ask you to vote in favor of this proposal for all of us who work and fight for a better state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have, I think, the next person is Laura Gonzalez. Laura Gonzalez.
Doesn't seem to be on.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to Jeff Pack, who I believe is in person. And if he is in the overflow room, we'll give him a chance to come, and we'll move on to our next remote group, which is Jose Cristian Piedra, Germán Godeniz, Lorraine Johnson, and Lillian Garcia.
I believe only Lillian is in the remote for that group.
Okay, great. Lillian Garcia. Okay.
Sí, aquí estoy.
Great, Lillian, you may begin. Comienza.
Okay, buenos días. Mi nombre es Lilian. He trabajado en Washington como mesera durante los últimos 15 años. Trabajé en el área de Tacuila, pero perdí mi trabajo en 2021. Estoy aquí para apoyar el Fondo 5109 para inmigrantes que puedan ayudarnos económicamente para recuperar nuestras vidas, ya que somos personas trabajadoras y con ganas de salir adelante. Cuando comenzó la pandemia, se cerraron los negocios y personas inmigrantes como yo no tuvimos la oportunidad de traer dinero a nuestras casas. No pudimos pagar rentas o cumplir con pagos de facturas. Personalmente, cuando perdí mi trabajo, me atrasé con los pagos de mi renta. Mi hija, hijo y yo tuvimos que suspender la universidad por no poder pagar. Además, la calidad de alimentación en nuestra casa disminuyó. Lamentablemente, muchos perdimos nuestros trabajos después de reabrir los negocios. Como inmigrantes no tuvimos la oportunidad de recibir ayuda. Hubo un fondo de ayuda llamado Washington Immigrant Relief Fund. La ayuda era de $1,000 en solo un pago. Desafortunadamente no todos fuimos aprobados. Yo recibí este fondo por una vez, pero no fue suficiente para los 2 años durante mi desempleo. Durante la pandemia hasta el día de hoy, inmigrantes como yo no hemos podido recuperar nuestras vidas, ni física ni psicológicamente. La pérdida de trabajo, de familiares y sin ayuda económica han sido una gran barrera para salir adelante. Estamos agradecidos por el apoyo que este Estado nos da, pero necesitamos un fondo más constante para sobrevivir. Agradezco la oportunidad de ser escuchada y representar personas inmigrantes como yo. Gracias.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, my name is Lillian. I have worked in Washington as a waitress for the past 15 years. I worked in the Tequila area, but I lost my job in 2021. I am here to support House Bill 1095, Unemployment for Immigrants, that can help us immigrants financially recover our lives since we are hardworking people who want to get ahead. When the pandemic began, businesses were closed and immigrants like myself did not have the opportunity to bring money to our homes. We could not pay for rent or meet our bills. Personally, I fell behind on my payments, such as my rent. My daughter and I also had to suspend our school and our college because of non-payment. In addition, the quality of food in our house decreased. Many of us lost our jobs after businesses were reopened. As immigrants, we did not have the opportunity to receive any assistance. There was an aid fund called the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund. The aid was a single payment of $1,000. Unfortunately, not all of us were approved. I eventually did receive this fund for one time, but it was not enough for the 2 years during my 2 years of unemployment. During the pandemic and until today, immigrants like myself have not been able to recover both physically or psychologically. The loss of work, family members, and without financial help have been a great barrier to getting ahead. We are grateful for the support the state gives us, but we need a more consistent fund to survive. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard and to represent immigrant people like myself.
Thank you very much. For the last folks wishing to testify, we are going to have to lower it to 1 minute because we have other bills that are also needing to be heard. I'm going to call through the names because I'm not sure who actually is on at this point, but I do want to call again Jeff Pack, who's supposed to be in person, Con, and also in person is supposed to be Rodolfo Canedo Olvera. And then the last panel that I believe was remote was Giovanni Severino, Cristina Ortega, Hamdi Mohamed, Maria Silva. If we can have them ready, and if the people are in person, which I do not see before us, we'll go to remote. Oh, there, Jeff, Jeff, you are remote. Go for it, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Jeff Pack, and I represent Washington citizens against unfair taxes. 3,000 plus really angry voters right now. We see what you're trying to do here. We also saw what you did with House Bill 1095, the sort of companion of this bill, by not even announcing it in legislative meetings email. So I missed that one. I had prepared remarks for this, but you know what? I just tossed them and rewrote it. Why, you might ask? Because every single one of you sitting on this committee knows exactly what I, as a citizen and taxpayer, is going to say. Put all the lipstick on this bill you want. The lipstick on a pig is still just a big, ugly pig. Instead, I'm going to be the burn your butt for every meeting on these two bills. I will remind you that we know what you're doing. You even just said, as this bill moves forward, as you intend to pass it. And when you do pass it, as I'm sure you will, I will make it my single purpose in life to make sure as many voters in this state as I can reach come election time know what you taxocrats did, and my reach is far longer than you may think. That's all. Thank you.
All right, so the last ones, I believe, I'll call one more time. Giovanni Severino, Rodolfo Canedo Olvera, Cristina Ortega, Hamdi Mohamed, Maria Silva. They're remote.
Yes.
And if you can keep it to 1 minute, Giovanni, I see you. Why don't you begin? Giovanni, we cannot hear you yet.
Awesome, my apologies. Good morning, everyone. My name is Giovanni Severino. I'm here with Progreso Latino Progress, and I'm here to testify pro for Senate Bill 5109. I'd like to mention that this is not just a Latino issue, but an issue that affects many immigrant communities in our state. Undocumented workers have been categorically denied access to unemployment insurance, a vital social safety net for all communities despite contributing to Washington's unemployment benefits for decades. There are many folks that are undocumented that have been contributing to these benefits for decades, and yet the system, doesn't provide any of that safety net for them. There have been representatives of many industries that testified against this bill today, and I'm still concerned as to why. I mean, it's being recognized that these folks make up a large population of the workers that do fill those industries. And, we really hope and urge members of the committees and those representatives as well of those industries to strongly support this bill, because these workers, these families really need the support, really need the safety net. So please, I urge you all to move this bill forward, and Washington can and should be a leader in groundbreaking programs that uplift all residents, regardless of citizenship status. All workers deserve dignity and support for their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Hamdi, please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. My name is Hamdi Mohamed, and I'm here in the capacity as the Director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. I'm here in support of Senate Bill 5109 to create a wage replacement program that will help those who lost their jobs and are not eligible to receive unemployment insurance benefit. The city of Seattle appreciates how this legislation infused funding towards undocumented worker via the Washington Immigrants Relief Fund. However, if it was temporarily using federal COVID-19 dollars, and we need to look at ongoing state funding targeted at supporting undocumented immigrants who face unemployment. It is time to ensure that undocumented workers are included in the state support system. Undocumented workers pay into our tax system, but are unjustly denied access to critical support. I'm urging this committee to support this bill.
Thank you very much. The next person I see. Is that Maria Silva?
Sí,
Yes,
buenos días.
comienza.
¿Me escuchan? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. My name is Maria Damari Silva, and I am here in support of initiative HB 1059. The reason why I'm supporting, I cannot say that I represent the Vancouver School District, sorry. Or the middle school where I work in one of the largest middle schools in the Vancouver area where I live, and I moved there in 2016, bought a house, and I cannot say I represent them, but I will tell you briefly that we have almost 1,000 workers, many of them.
Maria, your volume just went off.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, that you have 1,000 workers that have been impacted. If you can continue from there.
Yeah, we have thousands of students, almost 1,000, but many of them are Latinos. They come heartbroken. Many of these students are very sad because of their parents, how they get treated, not getting unemployment. They cannot learn. This is the citizens that we're raising. This is the students that we're raising to be the better citizens of tomorrow, the ones that are going to take care. Please consider this bill. And I'm sorry for the problems I had with my computer, but we have to think about the children of many of these undocumented workers who are being impacted overall if we don't pass this bill. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. With that, that concludes testimony on Senate Bill 5109. Dear colleagues, thank you so much for hearing that. And I will pass it back to our chair.
I want to thank you, Senator Saldana, for managing that very difficult bill in terms of the time and the individuals signed up, and also for your work on the issue. We have only 1 hour left in this hearing. We have 5 other bills to